morning, and thanks for joining us today for a webinar looking at best practices in assuring Office 365 and cloud email security and continuity. My name is Shona Bradshaw from Bytes. I'm delighted to be joined today by Ed Rowley and Richard Davis from Proofpoint, who will be taking us through the bulk of today's presentation, looking at those best practices and solutions to augment the security levels in cloud email. So a little bit of agenda for today's webinar. I'll do a short housekeeping slide just to let you know what the logistics for today's sessions are. Very brief Bytes introduction, as many of you know it already. I will keep it brief before introducing the presenters from Proofpoint. Richard and Ed will be taking you through some of the challenges in securing Office 365 and ensuring that email security and best practices to meet those challenges before a Proofpoint demonstration of their solutions to ensure email assurance and security. We'll do a Q&A at the end. We'll be delighted to take your questions via the chat box throughout the session, and I will be coming back onto the webinar at the end to present those to Richard and Ed. So brief housekeeping for today's session. Attendee lines will be on mute throughout the presentation, but please do post questions as they occur to you throughout the session via the chat or the questions box, and I will make sure that those are all posed to our presenters at the end. We will keep discussion today to strategy and solutions. We won't be talking and going into any particular commercials on technologies on this session. Of course, those types of conversations are more than welcome via your Bytes Account Manager post-session. We do have a recording, so we record all of our webinars so that you can share the insights with your teams and review at your leisure. And lastly, we do have a feedback survey at the end, a very short 5-question survey, which just is a chance for you to give your feedback on how you find the quality of today's session so that we can continue to improve these sessions for you going forward. So without further ado, who are Bytes? Who are we? So we are the security specialist reseller within the Bytes Allied Electronics Group. We've been a dedicated security reseller for over 16 years. And what we aim to do is to marry up the agility and insight you would expect from the smallest personal reseller with the global resources, insight and connections that you would like to enjoy from dealing with the largest global groups. We are absolutely passionate about technology expertise and ensuring we deliver technical value to our customers around any and all of the technology partners that we work with. As part of that, we have a dedicated in-house third-line support team. We offer very different technical services around our vendors, and because of that, we are delighted to enjoy top-tier vendor relationships, which means that we can deliver technical value and also commercial value to customers seeking to secure their infrastructure. So where do we work across? We work across a whole spectrum of information security, from the network, next generation firewalling, content security, web and email security, which we're talking to you about today, and crossing over into new technologies like cloud security. Essentially, whatever you're trying to do with your IT infrastructure, we are here to help you work out how best to secure that and future-proof your business against advanced security threats. So within those, what we offer to customers is, that accredited consultant-led delivery, technology installation, project scoping, project planning, security landscape and market mapping, and a variety of different technical expertise around IT security spectrum. So why are we talking today to customers about Office 365, and why are we talking about securing Office 365? Because Microsoft have, very different aspects within the Office 365 of security that are built in. Well, really, because there has been such an almost an epidemic rise in zero-day and advanced threats that have been seen, particularly ransomware, over the last year. And the built-in elements from cloud infrastructure providers have limitations in terms of their scope and ability to detect and protect businesses against zero-day threats and against the rising level of email threats. At the same time, many businesses are actually looking and seeking a cloud-first strategy, so are looking to move away from traditional security on-premise security elements as they are, adopting and seeking to exploit the productivity and cost efficiencies that the cloud brings. And user security is an absolutely critical success factor. We know that email is one of the top attack vectors. It's the easiest link in the chain for your bad actors to exploit. So that's why we're passionate about making sure that, as email is an absolutely critical attack vector, that we are able to advise customers and provide them with different solutions that they can use to extend that strong security that they enjoy on premise to the cloud. We don't think that companies should be having a different service level, a different security level in the cloud as that they enjoy in on premise. So with that in mind, all that remains for me today is to introduce our guest speakers. So I'm delighted to be joined today by Richard Davis and Ed Rowley from Proofpoint. We've been working with Proofpoint for some years now, and they really are pioneers in cloud-based email security. They block threats in 600 million emails every day and 7 million apps. And they are really pioneering a cloud-based approach to advanced threat management, advanced email threat management. And that's what we're going to be talking to you about today, is how you can augment the existing security in Office 365 and other cloud-based email apps with specialist third-party solutions that can help you achieve the strong levels of security that you need. So with that in mind, I'm going to pass over to Richard, and him and Ed will take you through the rest of today's presentation. Over to Richard.
Thanks, Shona. Let me just share my screen now. Great, good morning, everybody. Firstly, very brief introductions. My name is Richard Davis. I'm the Group Manager for our Cybersecurity Strategy team here at Proofpoint. I'll be leading the first half of today's session as we just dive in to discuss some of the reasons why you should focus on securing email in Office 365. And then I'll be passing over to Ed, who will go into a little bit more technical detail. So Ed, do you want to say hi?
Good morning, everybody. And as I like to think of us as the smashy and nicey of email security.
It's too early for that, Ed, too early for that. So if we think about the challenges that people are facing as people move to Office 365, I think it's clear that for pretty much every individual, everyone that's involved in an Office 365 migration, it's probably the biggest project that they'll ever undertake. It's a career-defining moment for a lot of people. And the reason is that, at the end of the day, email is probably the most important communication platform that any business still uses. And I think what that leads to is an increased focus, not only on the availability and deliverability of email, but also the ability to maintain the right level of threat detection, basically detecting and blocking the bad stuff when you make that shift, because generally you're making a fundamental shift in your security layer as well. And we have a huge amount of experience in helping organizations through that process. What are those issues? Well, we'll go into it in a bit more detail, but it's not just about blocking malicious files and malicious URLs. We see that actually over 2/3 of all the links, the URLs we see, actually don't point to malware at all. They point to credential phishing. And that's something that is a growing challenge for a business. If they can get credentials, then they can get into other systems, depending on the other authentication layers you have. And also, we see that business email compromise or impersonation, imposter attacks, CEO fraud, however you want to talk about it, is again increasing by a huge amount. Even the published losses are sitting at about 5 billion over the last couple of years. The real figure is going to be a lot more than that. So it's clear that the challenges in securing Office 365 go far beyond the traditional kind of blocking of spam and blocking of those malicious attachments that are coming in. And what we offer is a platform that covers all of the various different areas that you're looking at, including the ability to block and both credential fish and business email compromise attacks. So a very brief introduction to us. We currently have over 4,000 enterprise customers, so that's customers taking our enterprise solution set, and well over 35,000 customers taking our small business Proofpoint Essentials platform. We have over 50% of the Fortune 100 in the US. We have over 20% of the Global 2000. And in fact, according to a very recent Piper Jaffray survey, we're now the largest email vendor after Microsoft themselves, obviously off the back of the number of customers moving to Office 365. They can obviously claim a very large security customer base by virtue of the fact that you have to take Enterprise Online Protection, their baseline security product, as part of the Office 365 base. And Piper Jaffray has stated that we have a 21% market share now. So clear leader in terms of the market share in helping people protect that Office 365 estate. So why do we believe email is so important? Well, I think there's a clear disparity here between what the industry is spending on email versus where the majority of attacks come in. According to all sorts of sources, whether it be Verizon with their data breach report, Trend, FireEye, our own data, we can see now that over 90% of attacks still come in via email. They're targeting people and targeting the vulnerabilities in people, but email remains the #1 attack vector. So what's the industry so misaligned in terms of the spend, with only 8% of people spending on email security? Attackers use email because it works, and they continue to use email because it works, because people inherently trust email, but people are also fallible, and it's easy to attack a person, and attacking a person is easiest done via email. And there are other vectors such as social media that can also be used, but email remains that #1 vector. And why is that? Well, I think it's because ultimately, if you can get access to a person, then there's a much wider consequence here. And that wider consequence really is that they then get access. So not only can they get access to the machine by dropping malware on it, but they can get access to local data. They can get access to cloud data and those SaaS apps by virtue of having access to the personal machine. More importantly, if they've got credentials, then they can get across into accounting systems, they can get money, they can get into all of the back-end processes where a lot of sensitive data lives. And this is the consequence that we face. More so, we've also got to think about the fact that with the move to Office 365, it's not just about email. And whilst we focus a lot on email, we don't want people to have to go to multiple vendors. So what are the other ways that people can be attacked on Office 365? Well, the clear one is obviously using SharePoint and OneDrive, especially if you're using OneDrive to send and receive files externally. And here's a great example of that. So, many people will have a HR portal where people can upload CVs, and you have to accept CVs, you have to accept them from unknown sources. So it's a very good attack vector. So HR systems are a key target, and what do? Well, they move the CVs into OneDrive, and once they're in OneDrive, they're shared internally, and that can be a great source of attack, with people opening potentially malicious documents or malicious links. So, here's an example. Comes in, drops into a shared HR portal with that PDF or maybe Word document that is then laced with malware. And of course, generally, there isn't a level of scanning on that platform. So that's something that we also need to be wary of as well and make sure we take care of. So just a very small intro about Proofpoint, and I touched on it earlier, but we're very proud to be chosen by over 20 dozens of customers every week to actually protect Office 365, and we're growing at a huge rate due to augmenting that Office 365 security and growing our customer base. So how do we do that, and what areas do we cover? Well, of course, it all starts with being able to stop those advanced attacks, to prevent the things that I talked about at the beginning, malware from getting in, those credential fish attacks from getting in, fraud emails, those business email compromise emails actually hitting users. And whilst the technology built into Microsoft has features that will stop a lot of this, ultimately it's down to the level of effectiveness. And it's clear that Microsoft doesn't have the level of effectiveness that most organizations need. And we have organizations every day to run audits to actually understand, as part of that appraisal, does Microsoft meet their requirements, or do they need to augment it? And that's not just around stopping advanced attacks. It's about getting the visibility they need as well to be able to take action, especially if you're a smaller organization who maybe only has 1 or 2 people within the security team, or maybe just one person who's in IT that actually is in charge of the security side of things as well. Because what's really important there is being able to identify, maybe something that was delivered, what that payload was, whether the users actually opened that email, whether they've clicked that link, so that you can make a very quick and easy decision. No, I'm okay, I don't need to do anything. Or whether you need to go and look at that machine. And what do you want? Well, you don't want pages and pages and pages of forensics that you can't understand if you're a small organization. You want key facts. This was a Credential Fish. Here's a screenshot of what it looked like. It's clear it's an Office 365 login portal. I'm going to go and I'm going to actually reduce that user's permissions. I'm going to check to see whether the user entered it, and we're going to do a password reset. That's the actionable intelligence that people want, that we're able to give people. At the same time, we want to actually make sure that end users are happy as well. And that's both from a normal user base, but also a senior exec level. So let's dive into these in a little bit more detail. And we'll start with this advanced malware area. Now, I think it all comes down again to good enough. And what I'd urge everybody to do is, for all of these areas, look and see, is what Office 365 is providing good enough? And is this an area you need to augment or not? And I think this is something, this is a theme that you want to look at as we go through here. And it's clear to us that the vast majority of customers don't believe what Microsoft provide is good enough, or you have to buy an add-on package anyway. And if you're buying on add-on packages, well, you then will probably look at the market to look at a true security provider to see, can I get something from them that actually goes beyond just Office 365? Because then you've got the wider kind of scope to look at as well. So in terms of malware, well, why do we think that a good enough solution doesn't meet the requirements? Well, it comes down to the fact that the older techniques don't work. They're constantly customizing the attachments and coming out with, new documents. Okay, same underlying malware, but the way they package them and encode them means that they're a new type of file every time, or new signature. And that means that all of the signature-based detection just basically is constantly playing catch up. So for us, we believe that the only way to do this is actually to dynamically analyze those documents as quickly as you can in a sandbox, put them into a dedicated threat intel extraction environment so that you get all of that insight into exactly what it's doing. And instead of just giving it, like I said, a multiple page payout the forensics, actually giving people bullet points, this is what it does, here's what you need to check, so that those small organizations can take action on that. And we're very proud of the constantly high rate of detection we get, not only of kind of the malicious attachments, but also things like Credential Fish in attachments, a HTML file that's a Credential Fish form, that is also something that we're able to stop, and which then kind of leads us on to that next area, which is that email fraud, stopping your execs or your finance department from being targeted and money being wired elsewhere. And again, this is really hard to stop by traditional techniques because there's no malicious content. There's nothing in that you can stick in a sandbox or analyze. Typically, the sender's reputation is also good. They're low volume, so they can send it from a trusted source. And there's no content to analyze outside of very basic instructions, which would be in any day-to-day email. So we need a new technique to find these attacks. And it starts with email authentication and deploying newer technologies such as DMARC and doing that effectively. And that's something that actually isn't even built into Office 365 yet, the ability to actually validate DMARC. They do some basic SPF checks, which isn't a kind of a first step in email authentication, but DMARC's the protocol that actually makes all of this work. And then it moves on to actually having a detection technique that is specifically designed to find this content. And this is where our machine learning classifiers come in to examine all of the headers and content of that email, to look back over all of the email we see. And we see billions of emails a day. So we can build up a picture of what looks good and what looks bad. We can understand whether the email is being spoofed from your address, whether the reply to address, which is the return, so if they start a dialogue, goes somewhere else. We can do profiling on those execs to make sure that we're targeting emails coming in from them, and ultimately have a set and forget classifier that's specifically designed to find this. And this is proven technology. We've detected over 1,000 variants of this email fraud scheme just in the last few months. And this is something that all of our customers see, but they see it in low volumes. It is 1 or 2 a month. But this is a big issue for a lot of organizations.
Absolutely, and it really is very easy to underestimate how sophisticated these attacks can be. These criminal gangs, and they are criminal gangs, are very, very refined at putting together these campaigns and targeting people. We see this at the highest level of the state-sponsored activities in the news extremely regularly, and that trickles down to businesses.
Yeah, and the other thing I'd say is that there are people that claim, well, we stop this because we have spoof detection. Well, spoofing is only one part of this. They have many other techniques, including typo squatting, where they'll register a similar domain, where they'll just change the display name and use a third-party email. And in fact, spoofing is actually less than half of these. So if you're only doing spoof detection checks or anti-relay checks, then you're not going to solve this issue. And again, this is one of the issues with Microsoft's approach, in that they're not looking at all of the various attack vectors and avenues here.
Definitely, misplaced confidence or hubris could be your biggest enemy.
So one of the other areas that obviously is a problem, because there's no payload, is Credential Fish. Like I said earlier, we see over 2/3 of the URLs we analyze every day actually contain Credential Fish forms and not a malware payload. Now, the problem with these is that often they use a hijacked site, so they have good reputation. Like I say, there's nothing to sandbox, and the content is customized and looks legitimate. They're creating pages that look the same. So, a user, if they're not analyzing that URL or not looking at it really closely, is very easily tricked by this. And of course, a move to Office 365 is public knowledge. Anybody can see whether an organization is using Office 365. So what do? The moment you move over, they'll suddenly start hitting all of your users with O365 login Credential Fish. And that becomes a new problem for organizations. So one of the key things that we've built into our detection technology and into our sandbox is an entire engine that's looking for Credential Fish kits. This is backed up by threat intelligence and our 100+ person threat operations and research team, and our ability to basically detect the kits that are used to create these pages by actually doing live analysis of the pages before we allow the user access, or if we're not doing it before the user accesses it, doing it in parallel and then alerting you within a couple of minutes that somebody has accessed this page, it contains this Credential Fish. Because we see millions and millions of URLs a day. We can't sandbox every single one up front, so we need to make sure we're protecting users at the time of click as well. And I know a lot of vendors do that. So it's not about protecting the click so much, it's about actually the intelligence behind that. Rewriting and checking at the point of click is fairly easy to do. Making that accurate with a high level of efficacy is the hard bit here, especially when you're looking for things like Credential Fish pages that are targeted on your organization, probably haven't been seen before, so it's not going to be on a URL database. And this can only be solved with detailed live analysis of the pages.
Absolutely, and it's very easy to picture somebody at their desk tapping away on the computer, logging into their Office 365 portal and blocking that. But then you have to extend that to your road warriors, the people out of the office accessing the Office 365 portal on mobile devices, where it might not be quite so readily visible that it's a fraudulent page. So, providing protection for people no matter where they are nor what device they're on is essential.
Yeah, thanks, Ed. So I kind of touched on this earlier, but so many of our customers love the fact that we give them such an extended visibility into email. So many people that we've spoken to have a problem with two areas of Office 365. One is the ability to track messages in real time, because there's such a lag in the Office 365 portal. If a CEO calls and says, "Did my email arrive?" you want to be able to reply to him within a couple of minutes, not an hour or so. So first and foremost, people love the message tracing that we have in our system. And this again is one of the other reasons for actually putting an entire layer behind and before Office 365, rather than just looking at maybe something that's just going to run further attachment checks, maybe via an API. Because if you're doing that, you're missing a number of key issues with Office 365. One of which is visibility. Obviously, other ones are, those file sandboxes are not going to find Credential Fish. They're not going to find URLs that don't point to malware because they're basically malware sandboxes. So for complete protection, you do need to be sitting before Office 365 and being able to scan for a number of different types of content and analysis, especially if you want to find BC emails. And then the second area of the unparalleled visibility is our threat dashboard, where you can go in and get that insight with analyst written notes that are really easy to understand for somebody that maybe doesn't deal with security day in, day out. Or even if you do, we still make available that enhanced forensics, so you can go down and actually dig down into it if you've got a threat analyst who wants that extra level of detail. But we give you things like the targeted spread, so you know whether it's targeted at you or not, and who in the organization has been targeted. So this is real valuable insight for any organization, large or small, and Ed will touch on this in a little bit more detail shortly when he goes into the UI. But of course, as an organization, we're not going to say we're going to catch 100% of everything. It's just not realistic. We are going to miss the odd email, and it's important if we miss emails that we tell customers. We don't want to keep people in the dark. We have a mechanism built in to say, hey, this email has been delivered. 2 minutes later, we discovered it was malicious. It's got this type of attachment in it. Give you that insight to say it was delivered to these people. But also, especially for a small organization who doesn't have the resource to just manage this, minute after minute, provide a mechanism to just simply reach into the mailbox in Office 365 and pull that email out and tell you whether or not it's been opened in that 2 minutes. Because again, that is actionable intelligence. If it's not been opened, there is nothing you need to do. If it's been opened, then you need to be able to speak to the user, find out whether they actually clicked on the attachment, maybe do a quick analysis of the machine. So this automated message removal function is so critical for a lot of organizations, and even the largest organizations in the world are using this technology because it's such a time saver for them. Their security resource is really precious. Their messaging admins resource is really precious. The more they can automate, the better. So not only are you removing that time requirement on that individual, but by automating it, you're getting it done much quicker, because we can literally, within a second or two of that alert coming through, we can have that cleared up.
And just to highlight a point that Richard made there, we may miss detection at the time of delivery because there's actually nothing to detect in the email. The link that it points to, the URL, the website, there's nothing malicious there. The malicious code is activated post-delivery, and we detect that post-delivery when someone clicks on it and can provide that automated remediation to get it out of other users' inboxes and provide insight into who has received the message, who has clicked, and give you that actionable intelligence to solve a problem and close that window of vulnerability.
So a real life example of this is a URL embedded in a Word document, for instance. They send the email in, that URL doesn't point to anything malicious. So even if we were to check the URL at the time it comes in, which we do, it's going to come back clean. And then obviously we need that mechanism when that URL is clicked, or we've proactively analyzed that URL, because we do feed all those URLs we see into our sandbox. But that takes a couple of minutes. Well, since we know that's malicious, we can pull it back out if we're not blocking out front. But we're completely open to all our customers around what we did and didn't block across attachments, URLs, and BC emails, so that you can take the action that you need.
Absolutely. Far better to know that something's got through to allow you to deal with it than just ignoring it for the sake of statistics.
Yeah. Segueing slightly away from security, but one of the key things that, again, a lot of customers are concerned about in their move to Office 365 is losing control over that mail platform and its availability. Now, that can be seen as a good thing, because security or messaging team don't have to keep that infrastructure up, which is one of the fundamental reasons for actually doing that and the cost saving involved. But then you're at the mercy of Microsoft, and they're not going to say they've got 100% uptime. Even in the last 3 or 4 weeks, there's been cases of Office 365 being down for customers in both Europe and the US. So we provide a simple add-on that we call Enterprise Continuity that simply takes copies of messages as they come through our system. You can also sync your local messages so that you've got your internal traffic available within our continuity portal. And we simply make that available so that if Office 365 is offline, users can switch to our webmail service, or you can just sync their mobile device to a different location, or within Outlook, we can provide a link directly within the Outlook folder structure to our continuity portal to allow users to carry on working during that Office 365 outage. And like I say, for both internal and external email. And then finally, we shouldn't forget about the users, both within your organization and the normal users, but also those VIPs. So we believe that the best user experience is no change and no impact. So what do I mean by that? Well, I mean, for the point of the users, two things. Firstly, very low false positives so that you're not impacting them day to day, and that's an efficacy question. So that's down to how good is our detection. But secondly, if we think about things like attachments, there's a whole bunch of things we can do if we want to analyze attachments. But we believe that the best experience is for the user to get the original email as quickly as possible and to be usable in the normal way. So that means that we don't convert it into a PDF where if actually they need to open that and make an edit and send it back, that's a pain in the neck, because the reason why it's not in a PDF format is because people are showing editable documents so they can be edited. The other thing is that we don't want to provide a page that then requires them to click to actually sandbox that email and then send it through and wait for that. That's a pain in the neck. Users get frustrated in both of those cases. And in fact, if a user doesn't know that the email is coming in, if they haven't received it, actually they're not frustrated. So we have spent a huge amount of time and effort in getting our sandbox to be extremely quick. Now, typically people are expecting a sandbox to be 10-15 minutes for an attachment. We've got ours down to now 2 minutes. So 2 to 3 minutes, emails are delivered to users. So even if they've been on the phone and somebody sent a document through, that's an acceptable wait time, and it doesn't impact that day-to-day practice. They don't get frustrated in having to, click on a link or just view a PDF. They don't get frustrated in having to wait for that to be sandboxed and sent through to them. They simply get the document they need in as quickly a time as possible. And I touched on this earlier, so I'm not going to go into any more detail here. The complete visibility over what's happening with your email and the ability to set different policies is a huge benefit, especially if you think about your execs as well, where maybe you need to be more aggressive with your execs or have a different policy to help protect them.
I think it's important to note that this can be as simple or as complex as you want it to be. You can have one policy that fits all. However, that's not always sufficient. It is very straightforward to set up multiple policies to meet different requirements of different individuals or different departments.
Yeah, indeed. And then we're not going to go into this in a great detail, but obviously I touched on earlier the fact that obviously things like OneDrive and SharePoint scanning is critical. The other thing that's critical is actually protecting outbound data, especially with GDPR coming into force in May 2018. You need to make sure that sensitive PII is not leaving via email and via SaaS. So we extend our capabilities to those SaaS platforms, to OneDrive and SharePoint, to tell you there's a threat that's been uploaded into OneDrive and you need to remove this file, or automate that removal. You need to find sensitive content that might be being shared via email or SaaS. So think about maybe a customer record that somebody's inadvertently sent externally by putting the wrong email address in to the to box. You want to be able to detect that being sent outbound via OneDrive or outbound via email and be able to stop that exfiltration from happening. So again, we're offering a complete solution here covering all of the possible different risk areas within Office 365. Obviously centered around email, but extending to those SaaS tools, which is a natural extension of everything we're doing anyway.
Absolutely, and it's not a great leap of the imagination to see somebody getting compromised via a Credential Fish attack giving the attacker access to their Office 365 environment, then using SharePoint or OneDrive to upload a malicious document that can be then spread throughout the organization, enabling that attacker to actually drill down and get to the person that they want. Similarly, that could apply to external users that are allowed access, your supply chain, people who are, where criminals are using you as a jumping point to get one of your suppliers.
Yeah, and then the final area, we're not going to go into this at all, but it's worth mentioning. For some organizations, say financial services organizations maybe, or anyone that's highly regulated, there's a requirement to have a cloud archive. Now, Microsoft offer a cloud archive, but again, it's a case of actually looking and seeing, does the functionality within Office 365 provide everything that you need? Now, if you're regulated, you have to archive everything, not just email. That's all of the IMs you use and other tools, which obviously Microsoft won't cover. But also, you, in some cases, need very advanced e-discovery tools and supervision tools to actually supervise email. So again, we offer that as part of our package. So if you are in a regulated industry, need those advanced capabilities, we can take care of that as well. So hopefully you're getting the idea that we can provide an entire complete solution rather than just a point product that solves maybe one of the issues you're facing. So this is a great time to pass over to Ed, who's going to run us through just some live demos to actually show you practically how some of this works.
Thanks for that, Rich. Now, for the demo, I'm going to start off by talking about migration. One of the most important parts of any Office 365 project is the migration itself, and importantly, we don't want to interfere with email. So any project manager who's undertaking a migration wants to make sure that they can do that in a safe, secure manner that's easily to backed out of if something goes wrong. And with Proofpoint, we provide that functionality. I'm going to show you how we can help with any migration. Here you can see I've got a number of different groups. As part of my migration, I've got a group called O365 users. I'm going to go into that group, and here I can set up some group-based routing. And I'm going to have anybody who's a member of that group have their email routed out to Office 365. That means I don't have to change MX records. It means that I can back out quite easily or add users in a nice staged, staggered manner, simplifying the whole migration process in a secure environment. Very important to any strategy, any migration strategy. Similarly, Office 365 sometimes changes the IP addresses that it's sending out mail from. So as part of our allow relay settings, we can simply set up Proofpoint to allow relay from Microsoft Office 365 IP addresses. This gets updated automatically, so whenever Microsoft publish new IP addresses, the list gets updated without you needing to interact whatsoever. Likewise, when people are moving into Office 365, they may move their Active Directory from on-premise into the cloud. You can see again here, back into my user management, I can pull users in from Azure. Let me set up a new profile here. You can see from this pull-down menu that Azure is one of the options available to me. Azure Active Directory. But I can also keep my on-premise Active Directory as well. I can use multiple import profiles. I can also use the Azure profile for SAML authentication. So great support there for many of the features that people are looking to benefit as we work in cooperation with Microsoft, with Office 365, just augmenting the security. Talking about security, Richard mentioned earlier some points about protecting against imposter spam. One of the key features that you'll see in the Proofpoint service is our imposter spam classifier, sorry. Let's just dig in here, go into my default spam settings, and here you can see we've got a dedicated imposter classifier that's looking for messages that look like they're trying to spoof a VIP or a particular user. You can set up specific lists for specific users to help make that even more accurate when we're trying to identify these imposter messages. One of the other things administrators will notice when they move into Office 365, away from on-premise Exchange, is they may lose some of the functionality for message tracking. So a lot of Exchange admins will have used the message tracking features within Exchange and then log into Office 365 to try and track a message. And oh, wait a minute, we can't do that. The retention periods are not as long as we used to, or it's not come through quickly enough. The logs haven't sort of been resolved quickly enough for me to find that message. Again, we can help customers solve that difficulty within Proofpoint with our Smart Search. Now, Smart Search will log all the messages coming in and out of Proofpoint, and you'll be able to run a quick search based on multiple criteria, different times of the day, different recipients. If I run a quick search in here, oh, nothing in the last 24 hours. Let's expand that out for a few days. What have we got? Nothing. There, we got a load of messages coming out now. And let's choose one of these. A few messages that have been quarantined. Actually, somebody has contacted us saying, well, we haven't received a message. You can find out if it's been quarantined, look for that. We can also get a snippet of any MTA logs. Dig in there. There we can prove that the message was delivered onto the next hop. So non-repudiation functionality available. We can also see why a message was quarantined. Someone's phoned up. What's going on there? Let's have a look at that. Ah, yes. So you can see why it was blocked, which policy, and more importantly, we can then jump right through from this search into the quarantine folder, find that message, and try to work out whether it was blocked correctly, incorrectly, find out more. We can see what rules were triggered. So we know exactly what has happened to it. We can view the whole message, save it, forward it, reprocess it. Again, functionality that you might find missing once you move to Office 365 that will come in handy on a day-to-day basis. Now, talking about quarantines, often end users want to manage their own quarantine folders. We have a number of different options for that. So first of all, got the good old email digest messages. So I'll receive a message in my inbox telling me what messages have been delivered for me. You can see here I've got 5 low priority messages sent into a special low priority box. More on that later. I can release them. I can allow the sender, block the sender. I can report spam based on messages that have been delivered that weren't caught. I can also jump through to manage my account if I want to use the end user quarantine website. More functionality available in there. I can manage my own list of safe senders, my blacklist, review my quarantine. And if I had Proofpoint encryption, I could even, if my administrator allowed me, manage my own encryption keys here. So if I wanted to retract a message that had been sent, that I'd mistakenly sent in an encrypted fashion to somebody, I could withdraw the, or revoke the keys that allow them to view that message. If I wanted to, I could change the language, set a number of different options that are relevant to my profile. And if I've got multiple spam profiles available to me, I can choose one of those. So I could have like aggressive spam detection. I want all my newsletters, so I just want the default one, default spam protection. Plenty of options there for a user. Similarly, if I go into my inbox itself, I can also access the quarantine there. Or if I've got a message and I don't like it, I've got a Proofpoint plugin. I can move that message to my inbox if it's been sent to my low priority box. I can do the reverse of that and move that to my low priority inbox. Future messages from that sender will then be sent there. Delete and block the sender. Report to Proofpoint as suspicious. Jump to that end user web quarantine area I just mentioned, and also jump into my email continuity interface. Email continuity, again, Rich talked about that, very useful feature for people moving to Office 365 who want to make sure that they can work even when Office 365 isn't. I can jump into that very quickly. Single sign-on will apply. That's going to authenticate me in there. And again, I've got access directly to my inbox, my sent folder. I can see my calendar, my contacts, allowing me to work as normal, even if Office 365 is down. And once Office 365 comes back up again, it will all resolve itself nicely. So there we've got the options for the end user to manage their own spam, to use the Outlook plugin to make changes, to report suspicious messages, to jump into continuity, and also to view the quarantine website if you want to make that available to them. Now, Richard also talked a lot about the blocking advanced threats, targeted attack protection. Here's an example of that dashboard now. I've got a real life traffic that's been anonymized from one of our customers. And we can see lots of information. I can search based on multiple different criteria, different days. You can see where threats are widespread, highlighted threats that have been marked as notable by our analysts. I can also see where users are at risk. At-risk users are where a message has been delivered. We talked earlier about sometimes messages do get through to the inbox, and it's important to know when that has happened. And also impacted users. This is where a user has clicked successfully on a link that goes to a malicious or phishing website. First of all, though, let's have a look at one of these notable targeted campaigns, Panda Banker Trojan. Importantly, okay, we can see where the attack went. We can see that Proofpoint blocked all of the messages. We can also get samples of that, screenshot samples of what that message is trying to do. And more importantly for me, if I click on read more here, we've got a lot of analyst notes. So we've got the command and control addresses for the malware. We've got download URLs, more command and control URLs. So we've got actionable, reusable intelligence. So here we're not just blocking an email, we're blocking an email and providing intelligence to administrators, to security teams, to third-party security products that can use that to identify or prevent the same malware or the same malicious activity coming in from a different vector. And that is key to a successful security policy. You know, knowing what you're up against, being able to have this sort of 360-degree protection. We talked about imposter scams earlier as well. Here's an example of one of those from the same company's dashboard. I can click into that. Obviously, it's been anonymized, but we could get identification of some understanding of who's being targeted, what the message is like, and use that information to help build a successful security strategy. Maybe that involves training users or blocking other IP addresses, but it gives you enough information to understand the nature of the threat and respond. Going back into the dashboard itself, let's have a look at some of the impacted users, and again, some of the actionable intelligence that we've got in here. Let's have a look at this one here. We can see that 34 users were sent the message. 3 are impacted. That means 3 people have clicked on it. I'm going to drill down into this particular user who's clicked on it twice. I've got message information. And I can also see click information, the actual URL that user accessed, the time they accessed it, the IP address from which that originated, what platform and what browser. Why is that important? Again, if you know that a bit of malware or a URL is trying to exploit a vulnerability in Internet Explorer, and the user has come in from iOS or Safari browser, you don't need to worry too much. It's a concern, but it's not an immediate concern. If, however, it's a Windows machine with Internet Explorer and you're concerned that the most recent patches haven't been rolled out, so they might be vulnerable, you need to prioritize the action that you take. The same with any phishing accounts, phishing campaigns. If someone's successfully clicked through to a phishing website, you might need to reset that user's password. So that's why this information is vital to your overall response. No longer is this just about blocking messages. It's about blocking messages where you can, but providing that actionable intelligence when you can't. Of course, we can send alerts out from targeted attack protection and also use APIs to automate the distribution of that actionable intelligence out to third parties. Finally, we also talked about, or Richard also talked about, pulling messages out of users' inbox. I'm going to show you our threat response dashboard here. I'm going to look into some of our incidents. I know there's an incident in here that involves a email message. Let's have a quick look for that, 2556. There we go. Incident 2556. It's a locky bit of ransomware. And I can see from that the email was delivered. We've got lots of information about this particular threat. It was seen by both Proofpoint and by that organization's FireEye. If I look in activity, I can see that an automatic action has been taken. We've successfully quarantined 8 messages. Wait a minute, 8 messages? There was only 1. That's right. The individual received a message. They thought it was so interesting, they forwarded it on to 2 other people, who in turn forwarded that message on to an additional 5 people. So there were 8 instances of this message in that organization's Exchange servers or Office 365 environment. Although Proofpoint only ever saw the original one as it came through, we can track that message ID and see how it was forwarded, so we can tidy up all of those messages, not just the original, but all of those internal forwards, again, reducing that window of vulnerability, reducing the exposure to that threat, helping tidy up, and also demonstrating who it's been sent to. So if you need to follow up, you've got that actionable intelligence of who's been exposed to this threat, who, do you need to reset passwords, but at least the message is out of their inbox now. So thank you again for all your attention. I'm going to hand over now to the others. And of course, if you've got any questions, please feel free to contact us again after this webinar. Thank you.
Yeah, so just to close off, I think it's clear that people need a kind of a solution that is set and forget in a lot of cases, but we also back that up by both world-class professional services and a world-class threat intelligence team of over 100 people, so that we can block the majority of those threats coming in, but for those that are missed, we provide that actionable intelligence. At the same time, we have a complete set of solutions that covers off all of the areas that you might want to help protect your email infrastructure, from products that stop those advanced attacks across email and SaaS, through to continuity to maintain that visibility, as well as control and compliance solutions that allow you to block stuff going out, secure it when it needs to, but also extend that into that SharePoint and OneDrive platform. And then finally, give you all the visibility that you need to monitor messages and to take action when things go wrong. So that's it for me. I will leave Shona just to finish off.
Okay, thanks everyone for attending. Thanks to the Proofpoint chaps for their very smashy and nicey, as we like to call them, for their presentation today, and thanks everyone for their time, and we'll hope to welcome you to future webinars at mutually convenient times. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you, everybody.